Who is this irresistible creature who has an insatiable love for the dead?
You know, it's Halloween. I guess everyone's a devil and gets scared.
Stop the prime time, bitch!
Do you want to die, Sydney? Your mother sure didn't.
Cookie, I'm scared.
You fucking should be.
What happened? Are you okay?
He's slime.
Don't let her get away, Mother. Don't let her live. I won't, Jesus. I won't.
The kids of Elm Street don't know it yet, but something is coming to get them.
There's something out there, isn't there?
You could just see cuts happening.
What did that, Lieutenant? I don't know. What's the coroner got to say? He's in the John puking since he saw it.
They're gonna kill me for sure.
Did you do it?
There was somebody else there.
He was locked in a room with a girl who went in alive and came out in a rubber bag.
No one knows where it came from or who it will visit next.
Nancy? There's something wrong with you. You're imagining things.
Nightmare on Elm Street.
Welcome back to year one of Nerd Nation Spooktacular. Tonight we're talking about A Nightmare on Elm Street. I'm going to be honest with you all. I'm not a huge fan of this franchise. I think Freddy Krueger is a really cool horror villain, and I do think that there's some good installments in this franchise, but I've just never been a huge fan of the overall franchise. However, I can't deny that the original Nightmare on Elm Street is a great horror movie. What I think is the strongest part of the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise is its characters. Of course, you can't talk about Nightmare on Elm Street without talking about Freddy Krueger, who is probably the biggest slasher icon of all time. I honestly can't think of another horror icon that's as popular as him, except for maybe Jason Voorhees. Like, before I even got into horror, or before I even started watching this series, I knew who Freddy Krueger was and what his deal was. And one of the best parts of the original is that he's actually still pretty creepy in this movie. His presence is really unsettling, and unlike in the later sequels where he just became a silly, goofy guy, he's honestly really creepy in this movie, and you're afraid for these characters because you know that stuff's about to go down when he shows up. And of course, Robert Englund is always fantastic as Freddy. Even in the bad Nightmare on Elm Street films, Robert Englund was still great in them. Nancy is also one of my favorite final girls. Pretty much all the movies that Nancy is in are my favorites of the franchise. However, despite saying that, and despite Heather Langenkamp being a really good actress, I don't think she does a really good job in this movie. She can sell the fear of the moment, but when she's doing monologues or talking to herself, the acting is pretty flat and one note. It's not a terrible performance. It's certainly not one of the worst performances I've seen in a horror movie. It's just not that great and doesn't hold up that well. And the rest of the characters are enjoyable, but they're pretty forgettable too. I think the only one that really stands out besides Freddy and Nancy is Johnny Depp's character. I don't even remember his name, but you just remember him because it's Johnny Depp's first role. But yeah, I kind of feel like most of the characters in here are just bodies for Freddy to hack up. And granted, that's the point, but I feel like they should have been given some characterization before they got killed. And it's pretty much a joke among the fandom that the parents always suck in these movies, and that's no different in the first Nightmare on Elm Street. The parents suck in this movie, and they get pretty annoying. However, what I think is the best thing about this original Nightmare on Elm Street is its pacing. This movie has amazing pacing. It runs at like an hour and a half, and yet it only feels like an hour long. I saw this in theaters a few days ago, and I was surprised by how fast the movie went. Wes Craven was really good at making sure you were consistently entertained, and even if there were slower moments, they were necessary to the story. There's not an ounce of fat on A Nightmare on Elm Street. The tone of the first Nightmare on Elm Street is also really good. It feels like a scarier, bloodier, and feature-length version of a Goosebumps episode, in a good way. The tone of this movie is just really off-putting and unsettling. There's so many iconic and creepy moments that still hold up to this day. Like Freddy looking through the wall, the bedroom death where the girl is basically being thrown around the room, The scene in the alley where Freddy's arms extend. The body bag into the boiler room especially is creepy. And the scene where Freddy puts a hole in the bed and blood just spurts out of it. There's also really great practical effects in all those scenes too. They still hold up to this day, and they look a lot better than most effects do today. However, my biggest issue with A Nightmare on Elm Street, and really the main issue that stops me from saying that this is one of the best horror movies of all time, is its ending. I'm not just talking about the scene where the mom gets pulled through the window. I'm talking about like the last 10 to 15 minutes. Granted, it is pretty cool to see Nancy fight against Freddy Krueger after being tormented for the entire movie, but it just kind of feels like the writers didn't know how to end this movie. Freddy gets defeated in a really weird way, and in the very next scene, he's back. It just feels really jarring. I feel like the ending was kind of rushed to keep this movie around an hour and a half. Overall, though, A Nightmare on Elm Street is a great movie. It may not be one of my favorite horror movies of all time, but I'd be dumb not to call this movie a classic. And it's a really good Halloween watch, too. It really gets you in the Halloween spirit with its tone and atmosphere. I'm going to give A Nightmare on Elm Street an A-. Guys, thanks so much for watching. I'll be back tomorrow with a new video in this series, so make sure to stay tuned for that. For now, that's it, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.